We provide outpatient mental health treatment as well as substance abuse treatment, to include alcohol as well. It's twofold. Addiction is your need to have something that gives you a level of stimulus that's pleasing. The second half of it is when you don't have it, your need to have it becomes all means obsessive. Addiction is a very, it's a mental thing, and in many instances, an actual physical thing. With drugs like heroin, your body becomes physically addicted to it. And the euphoria that you feel when you do use, that euphoria becomes addictive. The feeling good, the floating, the problems don't matter anymore. The issue is that when you use, those problems that you were trying to escape, that thing you were trying to get away from in pursuit of feeling good, doesn't go away. So then you come down, and then the cycle repeats itself. So currently in the addictions community, the goal is to treat whatever issues move you towards using. Whatever that use may be. It could be alcohol, could be opioids, social media, gambling. There's a euphoria that comes with it that people seek because they're trying to escape something else that doesn't feel so good. The other part of addiction is it's a lack of being able to cope. So when you can't cope with the day-to-day things, for you and I, day-to-day things may be putting gas in the car, eating, going home to a nice place. For others, their day-to-day challenges may be social interaction with people. Where am I going to get my next meal from? What people around me are good for me? What people around me are bad for me? It could be a failing marriage or a failing relationship, a failure of parenting, or a challenge with parenting, rather. That too catapults people to use. That's been my experience with a lot of people that we see here. We're all prone to addiction on some level. I think the common myth is that when you hear that someone is addicted, you assume that it's drugs. You assume that it's alcohol. You assume that it may be gambling. But we can all become, we all have a propensity to be addicted to something. Myself, I'm an avid coffee drinker, and I feel a little different in the morning when I don't have my coffee. Now that level of addiction may be different, but we all have a vice, and we're all prone to certain vices. It's those ancillary things that trigger that addiction or that need to have something. But we're all prone. And then there are some folks, and again, I'm not a statistician, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but what I've learned is that there are some people who have a genetic disposition to become addicted. You'll find a lot of families, a lot of folks that we serve, they'll come in having been addicted to marijuana or opiates or whatever, and then when we do an assessment, we do get some background information on them, and we'll find that mom was addicted, grandma was addicted, uncle was addicted. So when you grow up in an environment where substance use or various other forms of addiction are very prevalent, then it leaves you open to, I can't say with certainty, there's a high likelihood that you're going to follow the same path. But to answer your question, I'm a firm believer that we're all prone to be addicted to something. May not be the same thing, but we're all prone to it. Absolutely. I think in about 5 to 6 years from now, when the statisticians and the studies and the researchers kind of dig into this thing, they're going to realize that social media addiction is an absolute thing, like internet addiction is. Now, I don't believe that there is a DSM-5 diagnosis for it, meaning I don't think you go to a doctor and he'll write you a diagnosis that says you're addicted to Facebook. But the behavior that goes along with people who have this incessant need to be on social media has all earmarkings of what we deem to be a standard addiction. Your need to be on Facebook, your need to be on, what's the other one? Instagram and all those sorts of things. There are folks who have an absolute need to be in it. And when they're not in it, there's a certain level of anxiety that comes when they're away from it, which is addiction. You know, I need this drug, and when I don't have it, I have some level of anxiety and withdrawal because I'm not around it. And I think social media fits that criteria. You have people who spend hours upon hours upon hours on social media. It becomes disruptive in their life, disruptive in their personal life, disruptive in their professional life. It allows people, and this is just of my opinion, it allows people to live this alternative, almost fantasy-like life. Because when you're behind a keyboard, you can almost be whoever you want to be. And you get to control the narrative. You know, you get to put out what you want to put out. As opposed to you and I meeting each other, you can't tell me that you're 6'5", because I can see that you're not. Well, on social media, you can be 6'5", you can be an NBA basketball player, you can be a great singer. You can even, as you know, you have people who have become so addicted to their own narrative in social media. They alter photos of themselves, they use other people's photos. So it's this need to be able to live this fantasy life that we all yearn for is absolutely addictive. I think if we all had the opportunity to be exactly who we want to be, and we know that's not always the case. I wish I could glide from the foul line and dunk a basketball. I can't. But if I tell you often enough on Facebook that I can, if I tell 20 people that, 15 people will believe me. And that's what I become addicted to. They like me for what I'm putting out. And I want to be in that. I want to be around it all the time because I get this praise, I get this affirmation, I get this thing. And when I'm not around it, and I gotta live my real life, maybe my real life is not so much fun. Maybe I'm not as appealing to people, so I have a need to get right back to it. I think that's why you see people who spend hours upon hours on Facebook. It's on their desktop, it's on their phone. Even when they see other people on Facebook, they gotta go to it. Now again, the flip side of that addiction, I think, is the need to be in other people's lives. I want to see what Dalen is doing today. I want to see what he fixed for dinner today. Now, ordinarily, would I call you and say, "What did you have for dinner tonight?" No, I could care less. But when I see you post these pictures, I become part of it. I'm part of your narrative. And there are millions of people on Facebook. But when I become involved in my circle of friends on Facebook, not me personally, but when people become so involved in that circle, it consumes them. The same way marijuana consumes people, the same way when people hear those slot machine bells go off, it triggers something, and they just gotta be around it, gotta be in it. And they have to live this alternative life of, again, I keep using the word euphoria, because that's what I believe people feel when people are on Facebook, on Instagram, they become emotionally involved, attached. When they're not around it, they feel very detached, disjointed. And the only thing that can fix it is to get back to it. Yeah.
Not plugged in, you know what I mean?
You gotta figure, our only connection is when I log in. We're not talking on the phone. We're not actually speaking to one another. We're actually typing. What I often tell people is that, you know, I could type something to you, and depending on the context and the way you interpret it, it can have 1,000,001 different meanings. So you're right. There's a connection without having to be connected. You know, like I used the analogy about you posting a picture of your food. What's the chances of me coming to your house for dinner? I think you're a nice guy. I mean, you can invite me over. But no, I'm good enough for just seeing what you cooked. And if you tell me that what you cooked was so good, I'll believe that you cooked it. I'll believe, based on the picture you showed me, that it is what it is. And I'll believe that you're a chef. And I like to eat. And before you know it, in a very trivial sense, we have a connection just over this plate that you posted. And I like that. I want to, I don't have meals like that at home. I don't know anyone who cooks like that. But my friend Dalen on Facebook does this. And it's ironic that they use the term Facebook friends. I tell people all the time, you see people on Facebook and Instagram, they have 2,000 friends, 1,500 followers. Well, the average person doesn't even know 100 people personally. So are they really friends? Or are they really just people who you have developed this alternative character with, that you can be who you want to be to that person? And the funny thing is, they'll accept you for what you present. So that you're sitting in your garage, jobless, and not having much going on. But you can create something to your friends, your thousands of friends, and they'll subscribe to what you're presenting. And as people, humans, we become addicted to that affirmation, that sense of belonging, that sense of being connected to people, without actually having to come out of the garage and shake anybody's hand. We don't have to hang out. We hang out on Facebook. That's our hangout spot. It mutes what we know to be normal social interaction. Have you ever been out with a group of friends, maybe it's 5 or 6 of you all, and everyone's on their phone? The funny thing is, everyone's on their phone and they're posting things on social media when they could very much say to you what they're posting. But there's something, it's still, even in a group, there's something about that level of, I'm still disconnected, but I'm telling you my thoughts. So I don't have to debate with you at the table. I don't have to explain anything. You don't get to see my facial expressions. You don't get to hear the inflection of my voice, none of that. So it mutes what we know to be normal social interaction, I think, especially with this generation. How old are you?
31.
All right, 31. So this current generation, I would say like the 15 to 22-year-olds, they've become so accustomed to interacting electronically that the natural skill we develop in interacting with one another, they just aren't learning as fast. When I was coming up, you shake hands with people, you introduce yourself, you say how you doing. Now, with the internet, electronics, and social media, I can text you and say what's up, and it serves the same purpose. Another person on the other end understands that's replaced the handshake. That's replaced a lot of things. So I always laugh when we go to restaurants and you see a table full of people and everyone's on their phone. Or when I was on Facebook, because I used to be on Facebook, I used to always find it interesting that you'll have people talking to one another on Facebook in the same house or the same room. Like I never understood why husbands and wives talk to each other on Facebook and she's upstairs and he's downstairs. I never understood that concept. But again, our social interaction has been so muted, that's become okay now. I don't have to come upstairs and say I love you. I can just say it on Facebook. And not only will you see it and like it, a million other people will see it and like it and think I'm such a groovy guy. So again, we become so attached to that. But I think it's certainly muted our ability to interact with one another. Even in the workplace, it causes, you have people who don't even speak to each other all day. They talk a lot to each other on Facebook. And then, ironically, they talk a lot to each other on Facebook, and then when they're in person, they don't say half the stuff that they said to each other on Facebook. Or they'll reference stuff they said on Facebook. Aha, that was funny, Dalen, when you said X, Y, and Z. I could have walked in your office and said that to you. That same joke. I could have made you laugh in person. But yeah, it's definitely muted the way we talk to one another. My man, appreciate you.
Let's go.